the like ironic thing about all of this is like to be contrarian, to have your ideas gain value over time, they have to be underappreciated when they are launched, right? This idea of the significance of an idea gaining importance over time versus losing it. And that, I think those are the two ends of the spectrum. This joke is funny today because this happened, but over time it just dissipates, versus here's this observation I have that if I'm right, the next 10 years will prove it to be true. Right? And there's countless numbers of incredible writers and creators that operate from that perspective, where you're making an observation that nobody else has made, or very few people have made, and articulating it in a new way, which can lead you to some of that initial engagement. But things of value, like these ephemeral observations that are valuable, that increase in value over time, like a Paul Graham essay or something like that, right? Where at the time you read it, you're like, oh, it's great. And then you read it 10 years later and you're like, oh man, this guy really knew what he was talking about, because like all of these things have been confirmed.
All right, welcome to another episode of Not Investment Advice. We've got Jack Butcher, Trung Phan, Bilal Zaidi here. What's going on, lads? Lots to talk about today. We're going to be talking about Neuralink, what's been going on there. Lots and lots of discussion to be had today. What's going on with you boys?
Wait, Neuralink, what else? What else do we have on the potential docket?
You did an amazing write-up about this. This title was Beware of Value Capture, or Beware Value Capture, all about kind of how tech apps influence us through different metrics and how we shouldn't be following them blindly. So we're going to be talking about that, a good little discussion there. And we'll touch on Apple's App Store updates in the EU. Is there any point in making stuff for the EU anymore is the question there. And then if we get time, we'll talk about Netflix and WWE partnership and a little Super Bowl.
A crazy
Taylor Swift
Jack
conspiracy.
Butcher.
There we go.
You know, we have to do it now, because Jack Butcher, a tinfoil hat corner, is what I think.
We need that every week. There needs to be there every week.
People love it, because remember how we all started this. There's no edge of the internet, but Jack is the person at the edge. It's not me and Bilal. We're watching Jack at the edge. And there were people teasing, we got a Taylor Swift conspiracy theory. But I got a meme of the week for you guys. Obviously, a running joke on this podcast in the last couple of weeks has been C4 and the pre-workout supplement. I was listening to David Goggins, the ex-Navy SEAL turned, I don't even know, ultra marathoner legend. He was on Huberman's podcast.
Absolute legend, yeah. I started it. I didn't finish it yet, but
it is.
Did you listen to the whole one?
I listened. It's the most intense podcast I've ever listened to in my life.
Have you listened to a lot of his podcasts before? Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. He doesn't do a lot. That's the beauty of it. Let me play this clip. So I'm gonna tell you what the clip is about. The clip, for the listeners, you're gonna hear it anyways. But David Goggins is about to tell Andrew Huberman what his favorite pre-workout supplement is. We all know on this show the favorite is C4. So what is David Goggins' favorite pre-workout? Tee it up. Here we go.
Whole medicine cabinet, but there's no medicine in the motherfuckers. There's no pre-workout. I don't take none of that shit. All I gotta do is flip my brain, put my finger in there, and say, okay, that's a good one. That's all I gotta do, man. I got the Rolodex of just like, go fuck yourself, Goggins, and what you want? Let's do that one today.
Bro,
there's nothing.
C4 needs to hire him, man, because imagine him with this and C4.
I want you to think about how great of an answer that is. He says he doesn't need pre-workout. All he does is goes into the Rolodex of all the times he's tortured himself, and he's be like, "Oh, today feels like that one." And then he literally says,
"I broke every toe in my feet when I ran 48 hours."
No, for people that don't know about Goggins,
legend.
First of all, educate yourself. But exactly like Bilal said, this guy's done like 200-mile marathons where he's broken his leg and like finished the last 2 miles.
Because he's medical advice, because that is not something anyone should be doing. In fact, insane guy, man.
No, but so we talked about Bilal. I know you started. The reason I said it's the most intense podcast ever is because he basically yells at Huberman the entire time.
Yeah. It's quite a funny interaction between the two, right? Because Goggins being Goggins, and then you got Huberman being like, get the daylight in your eyes. The reason
Goggins gave Huberman love is because Huberman 7 years ago blurbed his book for him. And he's like, he even says in the podcast, he's like, I don't do podcasts. It's like, I'm not a motivational speaker, is what he's saying. He's like, if you need me to motivate yourself, like you're basically saying you're a loser and you're done for. He's like, let me just
I don't know about that. I feel like I know he's saying that he makes a lot of money from doing motivational speeches. But
no, he does, right? He does like a lot of expensive things, but it's like his whole thing is like, but when he does his motivational speeches, he's yelling at people, being like, "Yo, stop using me as a fucking example." Okay, hold on a second. Why don't we do this, Jack? We haven't got. Wait, Jack, we need your rant on Goggins. I know that you have thoughts on Goggins.
Yeah, Jack, have you watched much of Goggins' stuff?
I don't know that much of his stuff, but he is obviously master of attention, catchphrases.
Oh my God.
You can't, yeah. He's incredible. Stay hard, right?
Stay hard, exactly.
The running videos.
The running video.
The running videos.
With his top off, just sweating.
That's a great.
I'll be honest, I've listened to a lot of Goggins because like I find it just mad entertaining mostly, but also I've said this before, in the gym, I have a playlist and it is random music with Goggins on top of it. I'm not even joking. I know that's ridiculous, but it's nice. Like it gets me in a certain state, and it's not even about motivation. It's just like it's become kind of a ritual.
Did you make this playlist?
No. It's some. If you just type in like Goggins music or something on YouTube,
I'm doing it, dude. I'm 100%.
I'll send you my one. It's so good.
Please do. It's because this guy, you hear him, you just want to run through. You don't actually need C4. You just need Goggins on like the back of motivational instrumentals because you just want to run through a wall.
You just want to push yourself. No, I can't remember who said this recently on a pod, but they were saying something like, you don't really want to be like Goggins. You just want to be in once a day for an hour. You know what I mean? It's like when you go to work out or you're going for a run or whatever. You're like, let me just push myself. And honestly, last year when I was going hard at the gym, like trying to get that habit going, and we're going to talk about this today about in the value capture section about incentives, motivating, stuff like that. That was my way of like getting in a certain state. And it was almost like meditative for me. But yeah, and I know all the lines because it's basically the interviews playing over and over again. It's so ridiculous that I listen to it. But I just accepted that it's an insane thing that I do.
You know what my favorite is who's going to carry the boats?
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
Can you explain to the listeners who's going to carry the boats means?
I think it's related to like when he was a Navy SEAL in the training. There was something about he was going home after like a long day of buds or whatever it's called, you know, like where people are doing those crazy physical things all day. And then the guy he walked past was like, "Oh, where are you going?" He's like, "Oh, I'm going to the gym or something." He's like, "What? You've been doing this all day?" And he said something along the lines of, "Well, who's going to carry the boats and the logs?" And anyway, this podcast is taking a little.
No, I think people enjoy this because you teed it up, but you missed the best part.
Jack's like, "What the hell are these two doing?"
Carrying the boats during buds is if you ever watch on Discovery, if you watch the Hell Week on Discovery, YouTube Hell Week. It's the two parts that people in Navy SEAL training hate the most. Obviously, I've done zero of this, but I've watched it many times on TV. One is carrying logs over their heads and the boats. They're literally carrying the boats. Imagine carrying something over your head, like 200 pounds or the equivalent of that weight that you have to carry as your team. That's going to break most people, right? Because they're just doing it for miles.
Yes.
And then the other one is when they lock arms and they just sit in the sand and you just get freezing cold water coming over you. In and out, right? Anyways, those are the two things.
But, last thing I'm going to say, because we should move on, but is, you know, I said earlier about how he makes a lot of money from his book and everything, which I'm obviously all for. What's amazing, though, is that now, do you know what he's doing now? You know those people in forest fires? He's actually in Canada. He's like training.
Yeah.
Right now. So, you know, when there's forest fires, people parachute in and do firefighting, basically. That's what he's doing now. Isn't that the most insane thing? Like this guy's got he's probably got 10 million plus, probably more, 20 million plus. He can do anything he wants. And this is what he's choosing to do.
I'm sorry that we're stretching this segment, but I'm jumping what Bilal just said because he talks about it on Huberman Spot. Jack's like, what is going on right now? But let me just finish with this thought. I'll tell you why what Bilal said is attribute. He literally says that to Huberman. He goes, I'm a 49-year-old millionaire. You think I need to do any of this? And he talks about what you just mentioned, the fire jumping. And the other thing he does, he's becoming a full-on paramedic. Like,
That's
you might get a
incredible.
heart attack wherever Goggins lives, and he's just gonna show up.
He's going to turn up in the ambulance. Yeah.
Imagine Goggins trying to bring somebody back to life. You're
Oh
not
my
a-
God.
I'm gonna lose you today. Anyways, man, we're
Stay
done
hard.
here.
All right. Anyway, I think we need to make sure this add in the title, Goggins Love Fest. But anyway,
Yeah.
let's talking about controlling the mind. Let's talk about Neuralink. You like that I did there. All right. So
Oh, that's a
Elon
good
Musk.
transition.
Elon Musk posted a tweet. Let's break this down for someone who's never heard of Neuralink. I'm sure people listening to this have probably heard of it. There's a discussion to be had about the pros and cons of this. Is this going to happen? But he basically said the first Neuralink product is called telepathy. Enables control of your phone or computer and through them almost by any device just by thinking. Initial users will be those who have lost the use of their limbs. Imagine if Stephen Hawking could communicate faster than a speed typist or auctioneer. This is the goal, or that is the goal. So anyway, let's break this down because let's be honest, he knows what he's doing. The fact he brought in Stephen Hawking, yeah. Well, you guys reckon he knows what he's doing there, obviously.
If people, well, I mean, I think what makes that difficult, whether or not, for people who don't know, there's a big controversy over Stephen Hawking's 2-3 weeks ago.
We've seen the memes. The
he was
memes
found,
are incredible.
Shout out to Alex Cohen, who did a thread of the best Stephen Hawking memes that people don't know. There's information about him in some of these Epstein files. So Jeffrey Epstein got very close to a lot of very successful scientists, and he used to dangle young girls, frankly, on his Epstein Island. We don't know the veracity of this. It was in a lawsuit. But what basically came out was that Stephen Hawking was in this island, and he may or may not have been a freaky dude. And I've heard separately that he was kind of into swinging. I don't know how that happened, but that was his whole shtick. So anyways, whether or not
let's break
Elon...
down as well real quick. Sorry, we didn't actually say what Neuralink is. Trunk, do you want to just give a quick little primer on what it is?
Okay, well, before I do that, I want to ask Jack, because we've been cooking so hard that we need Jack's input here. Jack, what was your reaction to Neuralink? How closely have you been following it? What are your thoughts on it?
Not that closely, but I texted you boys last night. What crazy time to be alive, boys. That that's actually come to fruition, as obviously many of the Musk promises are met with timeline doubt. This feels to me like, I don't know what it was initially, when this was slated to happen initially, but feels pretty swift. Like from the original announcements that they're working on this stuff to now, doesn't feel like a long stretch of time to me.
Yeah, a few years, I guess.
Just crazy, man. I just find it absolutely nuts that we're actually, stuff like this is happening and we just sort of go about our, oh yeah, that's good. We'll do that a lot. Talk about that on the pod, boys, for 5 minutes. It's just a crazy level of technical augmentation.
Well, let's
of the
literally
brain.
say what Jack is talking about here.
Yeah.
It's like it's a quarter-size shape chip that they've developed in-house. And the whole point is it's wireless. It is a surgical procedure. It gets put into someone's brain. And I know this sounds insane, but you have to remember, the first use case of this are people that are paralyzed or have neurological deficiencies or injuries where they literally can't do any, like Stephen Hawking, right? The whole point I was going to bring about Bilal was the Stephen Hawking example, even if because he did go viral, Stephen Hawking recently, who did pass away a couple of years ago, but Stephen Hawking is the canonical example of this individual, right? If you're thinking popular mindshare, somebody that's a paraplegic or somebody that has lost motor functions, it's Christopher Reeves, used to be Superman, sadly had an accident, and Stephen Hawking. Would you say those two are probably, in popular imagination, the most well-known to have lost a lot of physical function? Yeah, so the whole point of bringing up Stephen Hawking is the idea of, we all know the joke with him and the computer, right? Him talking, like, and the robotic voice comes like, I am Stephen Hawking. Like, and that's him using an older version of what Elon's basically trying to make, right?
Because this is the brain-machine interface. Yeah, just that's the phrase
exactly.
they use.
BMI,
brain-computer interface. Sorry.
Yeah, BCI. Yeah. And the whole point is this. Like, let's go 50,000 foot. I think this will help frame it for people. There's two things I want to bring up on the 50,000 foot level. One is about Elon's businesses and what he's trying to accomplish in all of his businesses. And the second thing is the media reaction we're going to see. We talk about the media reaction to Elon a lot. Elon bad, right? And obviously we're much more pro Elon on this podcast. It's not a surprise to anyone. Having said that, the Elon bad stuff on Neuralink is very significant because there are monkeys being tested, right? Animals being tested. And then now that visual image is much easier to manipulate to make it look bad, right? Now let's talk about the missions that Elon's been trying to do. What is Tesla's mission? Is to bring us a sustainable energy economy, right? That's the overarching mission. What does he do to accomplish that? He starts with the most expensive vehicle, a high-end vehicle. Starts with a roadster, right? $150,000 car, and then he brings the price down eventually. What's the deal with SpaceX? SpaceX has a big vision, multiplanetary species, but then now he has to make it economically. So what is the economic component of SpaceX? It's Starlink, right? So Starlink is the economic component. And what does Starlink do? It provides internet for the 3 billion people in the world. That's the larger mission that don't have internet, or internet access in rural and areas that don't get it. So what is the same thing for Neuralink?
You need to send one to Trung, mate, in Canada.
Yeah,
you know?
send one to me. So the Neuralink mission is the overarching mission, the equivalent of the multiplanetary species, is for Elon in his eyes, because remember, he funded OpenAI to begin with. He is concerned about a machine intelligence overtaking mankind and potentially, seeing that we are no longer relevant. We've talked about human intelligence here. So he's like, how do you counter that? Well, you create a brain-computer interface. You meld humans with the computer. So the throughput of information, right now, the fastest way for any of us to get information is reading or listening to me on a podcast, whatever you guys like, right? No, just like, so the book is the fastest way to get information. But Elon's whole point is like, there's a way faster way. It's the chip. And that's his point. That's the overarching mission. Okay.
Is he saying that it's two-way though?
What do you mean two-way?
Information
like,
goes
read
in.
right, basically. Yeah, it's like,
ultimately, he's saying he wants to melt, for humans to ultimately not get consumed by artificial intelligence or AGI, they're going to have to merge with it. That's the idea, right?
Trung, can I give another example? Trung, I think this was maybe years ago when he was on either Joe Rogan or one of these other podcasts. And because I think a lot of people, let's take a step back, a lot of people who aren't in technology or haven't heard of this idea, like let's say I tell my mum, they're going to put a chip in your brain, right? So in fact, this is a great time to do a little bonus meme of the week. I'm just going to quickly share my screen here real quick for people who are listening. In a nutshell, this says, Bill Gates, let's make more vaccines. The response is no, you'll put microchips on our bodies and track us. Elon Musk says, I'll literally put a microchip in your brain, and people say, LMAO, nice, yeah? So that is just a kind of a nice little summary of where we are, just in general, in the consensus of what's going on. But if you say to my mum or my dad or like a random person who doesn't know anything about this, they're going to put a chip in your brain, people are like, what? Wait a minute, I'm already trying to get off my phone, right? I'm trying to not be one with technology, whatever. So that is the general reaction from a lot of people, which I'll be honest, I have the same reaction just as a normal person, right? But one of the things, he gave an example, which I thought was really good. He said, we are essentially already mixed with computers and machines already. Just like pulling out your phone, and it's an attachment. It's basically attached to your body at all times, pretty much for most people. And it's in your hand, you're reading, you're listening. You've got AirPod that's going directly into your ear, that you could argue, what is the threshold for it actually coming together? Someone might say being on top of your skin versus inside your skin or inside your brain obviously is a big step. But we're going to get to this later. But I use a Fitbit, I use an Oura Ring, I even use a CGM, right? Continuous glucose monitor in the past. A CGM actually goes into your skin. It's like a tiny little needle.
It has to poke the blood, right? Dude,
exactly.
I love that you brought this up.
That's quite an interesting example.
I love that you brought this up.
A Fitbit is something you wear on you, and it knows how many steps you took. This one actually understood how much blood, glucose was in your blood. So this is kind of what he basically said was the time it takes you to read on your phone or listen on your phone, he's just trying to take that and compress it down. The time should be instant, basically.
The information. And I love the thing that you brought up is the gut reaction, like you said about your mom. Even if I told my parents about a chip in the brain, but here's the thing. People have pacemakers. My dad has something in his heart, right? You're telling me that if you told somebody 50 years ago, hey, we're going to have open heart surgeries and we'll put stents in there and pacemakers, people would be like, what? It's how normal is it now? So I want people to think about that. So let me finish that thought with the business. What is the business, right? Is like Elon's overarching thing was to do what Bilal said. I love that Bilal added all that context. Perceive the brain-computer interface. That's the equivalent of the multi-planetary species mission for SpaceX. So what is the practical everyday usage? And it's like from Walt Isaacson's book, the first thing is to cure Alzheimer's or to deal with Alzheimer's. People have Alzheimer's, they forget, they lose a lot of intellectual function. This is going to treat that. That's such a practical thing, right? That's as practical as Starlink is to providing internet. So think about the overarching mission, which attracts the best talent in the world, and then think about the steps to actually just building a business to make it sustainable, right? Even if the BCI never happens, we're talking about helping people that are paralyzed potentially walk, move their arm, and use their arms again.
Yeah.
Alzheimer's, which the pharma industry has spent tens of billions of dollars on, maybe hundreds, trying to find a solution for. This could be a potential solution there. I mean, so Neuralink, that's the overarching mission. We can get a bit more into it, but anyways, I think we pass it on to Jack on the brain.
Jack, any other thoughts on that?
I love
mate?
Jack's thoughts on the BCI.
I need to do more reading on it, but it is it's definite ridiculous step function in like culture. I also just am curious about how the filter between what you think and say is very different than what if anybody had a direct feed to your thoughts, how that would differ from what you would say. You know what I'm saying? Like that to me feels like the biggest cultural shift that could occur is like, there's like, how does that change the fundamental like social interactions that have been built up around your ability to separate your thoughts and your words?
And saying what you think is the right thing to say versus what's going on in your head. Obviously, if that was a fire hose of thoughts, everyone's done, right? Like you're cancelled. No one's going to trust you.
But maybe that's the Elon thesis, the total transparency of
take everyone
inner monologues.
Well, we've joked about it, right? We've talked about how if our group chats were, if tomorrow every single person's group chats were released, I don't care who you are, you're canceled. You're done.
Well, if it all happens at once, it's going to be a scale, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're probably going to be all right. If you're the only one, you're in trouble. But like,
it's gonna be a scale in it. He goes, that's a great way to put it.
Well, it will be. I mean, this. I don't know. Maybe that is. I really am fascinated by it, and it just feels like out of the realm of my comprehension to even comment on the second and third order effects of that. When it's like the first iteration of it, as far as I understood, was like help you type and like perform functions that would still be going through that. It's still it's translation of motor skills as opposed to a transmission of thought, right? Which is a massively different level of technical complexity, I would imagine, where like being able to point your eyes at the letters in order of a keyboard is very different than like your brain waves being translated into words. So I don't know where it lies on that spectrum, but I think the objective is to get it all the way to not that, right? It's just like you think and it's done.
Yeah. Well, Jack, I think the example you gave there is a good one of just like not having to process typing or thinking. It just kind of happens. But I think a lot of the early use cases are medical related, like Trung mentioned, right? Like someone who's paralyzed. And I'm just going to read a couple kind of facts to add to the discussion as well of like how it works. There's 64 flexible threads thinner than the human hair, right? So that is how they're using it apparently. And a robot is the one being used to surgically place those threads in you essentially. And that part of the brain controls movement intention. So that's kind of specifically what they're testing at the moment. And it's the first time Neuralink have put this in an actual human. It should also be mentioned that there are other companies in the world doing this already. There's one called EPFL, École Polytechnique Fédérale in Lausanne, which is in Switzerland. And they actually are one of the few other companies that have already done this, actually. So they actually helped implant something with a paralyzed man. And they successfully already did this and helped a paralyzed man walk. And the way they did that, again, just to bring that back, is like there's something in the brain, there's an implant that also talks to the spine and the legs and feet. So obviously, like, if that was Elon Musk and he blew up, that would be incredible news, right? Like, I hadn't even heard about that until today. So that is kind of the potential of all this stuff. Like, people who are actually having these problems, you're assisting them. The same way if you lose your leg, like you put a fake leg there, right? And you have some way of being able to speak to that leg. Maybe the top part of your leg still works or whatever. So yeah, that I just wanted to mention that because I thought it was quite interesting.
No, that's a great addition. It's just to show that 2 points, right? It's like, one is like, they're not the only one working on this problem.
Yeah.
This is because a lot of people will be critical if there wasn't an existing industry. Let's talk about the media angle of it, right? If you have seen about it, there's like, so they work with, so monkeys are well known to be used in this type of research. And it sounds like Neuralink, the way Elon said it, so I know some people will question that, but I read an article from Bloomberg, from Ashley Vance, who wrote the book about Elon. He went to these Neuralink facilities. I mean, the TLDR is like, Elon was saying that no other animal facility is like better for these animals, right? It's like these animals that they do have, if you take all things equal anywhere else, they're going to be less well treated. And they usually work with a lot of animals that have terminal diseases as is. So they're already headed towards the end. And the other part that you'll see with a lot of, so the criticism is primarily the shock factor, right? It's like, oh, we went to this Neuralink factory or the labs and this monkey was bleeding. That's the type of stuff I'm seeing the mainstream coverage of. Instead of like, hey, listen, like the Bilal talking about the story with the Swiss company. It's like, oh, look, we're talking somebody that was paralyzed is now able to move their limbs again because they're able to communicate these signals from their brain to the different body parts. And I think that was the media angle that I saw. And the best way I compare it was when Starship blew up. You remember the first one, when the Starship base, the first Starship launch, and the big news piece was fish wildlife have been greatly affected by the Starship launch. And it's just like that. I get it. We have wildlife regulations for reasons, but again, there's a larger mission at play here. And in the history of mankind, when we're trying to make certain advances technologically, yes, you're trying to minimize the negative effects, but this is just par for the course. And to Bilal's point, this is not just Neuralink. This is an entire industry that Neuralink has brought light upon. And a lot of people working on this problem.
Yeah. Sorry, go on, Jack. Go on.
No, finish that because mine's a lot off.
All right, I'll just say one thing. I also think it's important because we're going to talk about this in the second section, but I think the kind of sad thing is because Elon has become this kind of like love-hate sort of person, you're either like really love him, everything he's doing, or you're anti him and he's an evil tech billionaire who's trying to control the world. And the nuance obviously is probably in between, right? Like, he's not perfect. There are a lot of bad things that could come from this. Like, I think that's also important to acknowledge. Like, just we all have been talking for the last 3 years about like your Ledger wallet or your crypto wallet getting hacked and you're losing all your dumb NFTs, right? Like, obviously there's going to be a lot of higher implications or bigger implications of if there's actually chips in lots of people's brains, and if, let's say, that's connected to the internet, like what does that mean? The implications of hacking and stuff like that. Like, there's lots of things that could go wrong, but like you said, it's always the case with anything that's new like this. So, and the problem is the way things are discussed nowadays, they're just the headline, right? Like, most people didn't even read the 2-minute write-up, where BBC or whoever wrote about it. They just literally read the headline and they decided, oh, that Elon guy, don't like him. He's trying to control us, like people thought about Bill Gates. Or the flip side, oh my God, Elon's a genius. He's done it again. And it's just like, the truth is a little bit in the middle here. So yeah, that was the only thing I wanted to add. What did you have, Jack?
I was going to say there's maybe some parallels to like the AGI thing here. you know, like the debate about what AGI is and when it crosses some threshold from a translation of motor skills to control a screen to a like transmission, reading and writing of information to and from a brain. Like those things are probably further apart technically than we infer from looking at the device itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Whereas like you're not like one firmware upgrade away from being telepathic in terms of transmitting. I think you are transmitting thought, but it's not language that is moving from one place to another. It's like go left, go right, press that button, which again, I am not qualified whatsoever to comment on how nuanced it gets beyond that, but it reminds me of that debate, you know, of this is primarily a medical device, and to what extent it remains, like to what amount of time it remains in that category is completely unknown at this point in time. Well, to us at least. Maybe they have a better idea.
Well, Jack, the other example I think I always thought about was language. And I don't know if this is even going to be possible with something like this, but, you know, someone's listened to this, spent 10 years on Duolingo hitting beginner level Spanish or whatever. And I've just been saying, I'm just waiting for the Neuralink kind of as a joke, because I don't know if I would even.
No, but literally flip it on. I know it comes
Imagine that. It's like, oh, let me just download, like the way Google Translate. Like, have you ever traveled where you download it offline and you've got the translate? You can even do voice on there, and it says you'll speak in English and then conversation mode does it in Spanish and vice versa. And now, like, imagine that was actually just a download away. I don't even know if that's something.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine the like disparity in outcomes if that became available to like even 100 people is insane.
Yeah, it's like superpowers, right? And like imagine ChatGPT in the brain, or like the information, you know, like all the things that you could. Not only is it just like the world's information, which we've been. I think when we first heard about Neuralink, I was thinking of the lens of just the internet in your brain, or like the ability to Google search essentially. But now since then, there's now ChatGPT and all this stuff where you're like, wow, I didn't even realize I could summarize stuff. I could generate ideas, etc., etc. So that is kind of wild to think, like the ChatGPT version of Neuralink or something like that. That is wild.
Unreal.
Trung, any other thoughts on that before we talk about your value capture stuff?
Well, let me just add a little fun fact. I don't know if you guys saw this, but this is what the Neuralink logo is. So if people don't know, every single Elon thing has a hidden message in the logo. So the SpaceX logo, the X on the SpaceX, if you look at it, the X is the trajectory of a Falcon 9 rocket. And then the Neuralink, Jack will appreciate this. The Neuralink logo resembles the waveform of a neuron when it fires. So if you Google action potential graph, that's a little bit of chemistry for you. But the way the neuron fires, that's how you get the up and down on the Neuralink. And it'll always like an N, which would be the first letter. Always that's a hidden message, people.
I like that.
So
Fun fact fan in the building.
Yeah.
Beautiful. But yeah, curious to hear what people think of that. Would you actually, I guess a question, would you guys sign up to this in the future? How do you feel about that? If you had a chance to try it, obviously not today. One person's tried it.
I would need many years of data of safety. But I think again, you'd
be destroyed by then, Trung.
Yeah.
yeah. The normies are done.
Consumed, yeah.
As soon as I wait, it's over, right?
You wait until $69,000 to buy Bitcoin.
Yeah. There we go. Fiat fan.
Hey, by the way, Model Y just became the best-selling car in the world, boys.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
4 years ago, they started production on it.
Is that number of units or is that revenue? Do you know?
No, number of units.
1.2
million cars, I think, last year.
Wow.
More than he tweeted it. More than the RAV4 and the second. More than the RAV4 and CRV combined. Crazy.
Whoa, dude! I definitely
in California. In California,
Jack's adding a lot of quality. Still impressive.
I'm saying
only.
No. I'm saying the RAV4 and CRV stat is California, but globally it is the best selling car in the world.
Damn. Yeah, I didn't know that. All right,
Dude, shout
let's
out.
move on to the next section. That was a good discussion. I'm curious if people should share what they think on Neuralink, because it is actually one of the, when we talk about edge of the internet stuff, this is like as edge as it gets. So really interesting to hear.
I
your
love how
thoughts on
Jack's
that.
And
like
by the way,
Trump.
great branding too, like telepathy,
Oh yeah,
Oh, right.
great name.
like
as well.
incredible.
That's the name of the product. Yeah.
Yeah, incredible branding. And like, I wonder if that's the hardware or that's the what you're referring to in the like the configuration of the software in the chip. Because the telepathy, it sounds like the name of the software. Neuralink is the hardware device, right? Be interesting, like also to see the like if you take the Tesla software model update and put it into this, where it's like, you know, upgrade the speed of your brain processing power for $4,000 a year. Like all of this stuff
that's
is like
mad.
dystopian as hell, man.
Yeah, that's
It's cra-
mad, isn't
It's
it?
insane.
That's pretty mad. Jesus
It's
Christ.
crazy.
All right.
Wait, I just wanted to finish the point that Jack made. Trung, if you wait, it's over, man. Like, as soon as you
Yeah.
wait, Bilal will know every
There's
single
no
language known
C4
to
amount
man.
that's gonna
Yeah.
get
Well,
you
I
to
would
that
say it's
next
either
level.
great. It's either you. It's a barbell outcome, right? Either you
You actually
made the
know
right
what's
decision
crazy?
or
No, but Jack, you brought up such a great point. The prisoner's dilemma here of whether or not to get the chip, it's crazy. If you don't get the chip, you are no longer economically needed in society.
yeah, there you go.
Because somebody
Your
will just.
newsletter
Yeah.
is going out of business, man.
But then you
That's
take it, you don't know what the result will be. This is like, it's a serious.
No, you'll be like Trung's organic newsletter in the other like corner of the internet. I mean, it is a. I know, man.
Organic newsletter.
The Amish,
No brain chip.
the Amish level of distinction between
Fiat
current
newsletters
technology,
only.
current technology users, and direct brain computer interface users. I think we're a little bit off though, boys. I think we're a little while.
Might be jumping ahead there. Yeah.
You ship
we
a
got
few
little
more
time.
Yeah,
podcasts
I
out
think
before
this
then.
one is-
We maybe get to episode 200 before
Yeah, before we're worried
goes
about
off
extinction.
the rails. Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's see. Things move quickly. All right, talking of Trung's newsletter, here we go. That's the second transition I hit today, so I'm feeling good. All
Man,
right.
you were on a
Trung,
transition
there we
heater,
go.
dude.
There we go. Yeah, this is key. All right, so Trung, you had a great write-up. This is one of my favorite newsletters you've written for a while. Like, you've got some bangers every week, but this one I literally read twice. One mainly because I was
appreciate you,
preparing
buddy.
for today, but also when you sent it originally. But yeah, the idea of this was called Beware Value Capture, right? So the kind of subtitle here was tech apps influence our behavior through metrics, don't follow them blindly. So there's a lot to go in here, but why don't we break this down by talking about what you did? Because you were breaking down this, academic paper, which, you joked about, like, you've got the PDFs on the laptop, or back in the day when you're doing your dissertation, you got JSTOR open. Anybody
Well, let me
reading
ask you
that
guys,
anymore?
how many unread PDFs do you guys have on your computers?
I don't download PDFs. No. I just got a 1099 that I'm sending Rafa
It's
today.
like-
that was the last one.
It's like,
that's the
Trung,
only
I
one
ain't
got.
trying to get, Trung, that's why your computer is just full of malware. You're
Yeah,
downloading- you're the dude
That might be
clicks on
something
people.
else, Trunk. But yeah. But no, so Trunk, what was this? Because all jokes aside, this was a really interesting idea. It was a paper from
C.T. Nguyen.
Yeah.
So,
Is he a
this
fellow
is like
Vietnamese guy? I take it, right?
fellow way cooler Vietnamese guy than me. So I'll give you TLDR on C.T. Nguyen. Super interesting dude. So a couple of people reached out to me on this paper, and C.T. Nguyen actually commented on Twitter. Sriram from Andreessen Horowitz, venture capitalist, great former product at every major social platform. He kindly enough tweeted out the article, and C.T. Nguyen replied and said, "Oh, that was a very good write-up. Kind of captures what I was getting. We're talking about value capture." But the point that I wanted to bring up was he's a philosophy professor at the University of Utah. Used to be a food writer for LA Times. And
That's an incredible.
It's-
Sorry, real quick. That's
Yeah.
an incredible career already, right? Food
is
writer, philosopher, and
we should link to
researcher.
it. One of his articles for the LA Times was he ranked the best Asian breakfasts. Which I want you to think about that. That's an incredible article, a premise. But his primary field of work is in games. So he looks how games
Game design,
structures,
right?
game design, game incentives. He looks at how that actually translates to the real world. And we've talked previously on one of his other papers. We didn't go super deep. It was about, he said how Twitter gamifies communication. And we'll get into that. But I want to talk specifically about value capture. So I'm going to give I'll give 3 examples, and then I'm going to go to Bilal because I want to pass the baton off to Bilal before we get to Jack, because Bilal talked about Fitbit. Bilal has gamified his health in a bit. So I love like his thoughts on this. So the 3 examples that CT Win brought up to talk about value capture is this. We're talking specifically about metrics. So I'm going to give you a tech example. The first one is Fitbit, right? Bilal, what is the goal of Fitbit? Broadly, right? It's like it counts how many steps you take. That's kind of like,
that's mostly what people use it for, yeah.
And you're using that step count as a proxy for your health, right? As in, if I can hit 10,000 steps a day, that's positive for my fitness.
Yeah, I would say, just to be specific though, I think we're going to come back to this later, but the word, I would challenge the phrase as a proxy for your health. I would say for me personally, it's a softer, just a gentle nudge to say, oh, you haven't been as active today as you would want, and you're made aware of it. I wouldn't say I'd translate that to my health is good, because there's a lot of other parts to it. But I think we'll come to that later.
You're hitting on the point, right? It's like, I think you're
to a lot of people, they do though. They're like,
right?
My
it's
number,
like,
or the aura ring, right? They wake up and they got a bad sleep score, and they're like, oh, my whole day is terrible because I didn't sleep well last night.
Right.
So there's so we'll get back to that balance.
Your point though is the entire point is a metric by design is narrow. Because if it was broad, it could not measure things. That's
it's very
point.
specific. Exactly.
You have to make it specific, numeric, and measurable, right? Which makes a lot of sense. This makes a ton of sense, and we'll get into why large institutions and organizations require this. Tech platforms, governments, or any large corporation. It makes a lot of sense, right? You need a narrow number. So the example he brought up with the step count was he had a friend that was on vacation, and Jack will know this from his broccoli measuring days, but the couples were on vacations, 2 couples. And one couple was in a full Fitbit counting mode. And they're like, if we didn't hit our 10,000 steps, we're not going out to dinner. Let's just say that they're in like a Mexico resort. You're supposed to be on vacation.
They're
right?
fasting. That's mad.
But this is an example of value capture. The value of being on vacation, which is being with your friends, creating new memories, has been overpowered by the value that Fitbit has imparted.
Self-imposed thing though.
Self-imposed.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's self-imposed, but technology is so powerful. We talk about it all the time. The incentives it creates, the addiction I have to seeing number go up, right? So let's just say that they've hit 10,000 steps for 100 days straight. They don't want to break that.
They want to break that streak.
They don't want to break that streak. And that streak is self-imposed, but it's done through gamification. So that's one example. That's the technology example. A more real-world example he uses is law school rankings. So before law school rankings, most students, they would actually go through, like Bilal said, a holistic process of what mattered to them as a potential legal student. The same way Bilal says that health is much more than just steps. Health is how do you feel, what's the sleep, are you getting the right diet in? It's not just the 10,000 steps. But a law school ranking is the equivalent of 10,000 steps in the sense of what is the law school? What is the ranking? That's all that matters, right? So that influences the students, the school, and the parents. So the schools will now start doing things just to get a high law school ranking. So here's an example. Some schools will push for applications even though they know, they'll tell people to apply and they'll still screw them because having a low acceptance rate gives you a higher ranking, for example, right? So you're manipulating your values to hit these arbitrary numbers. So let me just, I tried to explain how a number can influence everything, your life and
I think everyone can think of examples of that in their own life, right?
Yeah. So like, and let's give the last one. Everybody will get Twitter. I can do 2 things right now. I can make a Think Boy thread that I know will go viral because that stuff gets rewarded because in that instant, it's much easier to get clicked on versus something I think about for weeks to write about. And then I'll throw a long body of text on Twitter. To me, that long body of text, I put in way more thought. I think it'd be way more impactful. It just won't go viral, right? That's just not the medium for it. So what do? Trump goes for low-hanging fruit. He's just like, let me throw out a meme instead of do something that's more impactful. So that's a form of value capture. You're playing the game that that platform has designed for you instead of doing what you actually want. So Bilal, I'd love your health thoughts on this. And if you could jump on the Fitbit example.
Yeah, that was a great breakdown. I think I think the way you broke it down there with the examples is perfect, because the other one I say that is probably relevant to people listening to this is you mentioned number go up, right? And we talk a lot about crypto, stock market, financial tracking, like all of these in their own way have become gamified. I mean, Robinhood is a great example of that. But did you watch Dumb Money as well? I know Jack just watched it. Trung, did you watch Dumb Money yet?
Yeah, is it good?
It was fine. I thought it was pretty cool. We can talk about it another time, but that was a great example of, Robinhood, that whole era of everyone's waking up, like, what's happening today? Oh, the crypto stuff when we were in the crazy bull market, you're waking up and you're like, oh, now I need to chase that next 10x pump, right? Like, these are all examples of not technology necessarily driven, but like market driven or
but it's literally influencing your behavior, right? Like
completely.
You're waking up and you're doing things to chase that metric. This is literally what it means. It's like you're not even living your life. You are a slave to that metric.
Exactly. And I think the way I've always thought about it is, like, you guys know I'm a pretty numbers driven person, right? Like, I like seeing numbers, whether it's work or personal life. I like to put hard numbers for stuff, but I have a pretty good relationship over time with numbers to say they are limited, right? They just help me see the world from one perspective, but I'm very careful not to overemphasize the numbers. Like, my whole measure can't be from just how many likes did this get, how many downloads did I get.
But was that a process though? Was that
massive process?
Okay, that's what it means.
And even now probably struggle with it, right? Like anyone else. But I think the fitness example, coming back to that Fitbit, is a great example. When you're in a stage where, like last year, where I was really cutting my weight, I was measuring the calories I eat. That's one number metric. Putting it in an app, right? And then I would weigh myself on Fitbit scales, which comes into my app. Then I've got the movement and I know roughly how many calories am I burning. I would measure my workouts, etc. So at the end of the week, I could see, did I burn more calories than I ate? And then, and over time, that is a way I designed to encourage myself to do positive things for my body, right? And my health. But I think the negative side is where you're so overly emphasizing, like, oh my God, today I can't, right? For example, this happens to a lot of people. I can't eat out with my friends today because I'm going to go over my calorie count number. Right, like that's probably happened to me like several years ago, not recently.
That's literally value capture, right? The value of the number is overtaking what you care about your friendships.
Yeah. And I think there's a balance there around like a certain type of personality. So I'm a pretty all or nothing person, so I find it hard to balance. So maybe there's self-imposed boundaries I create for myself, which is healthier. But when it becomes this feeling of, I'm not going to hit a number, that's where it's really like not healthy, right? And it creates bad relationship with your health and your food and all that sort of stuff. So I gave the Aura example of the sleep score. A lot of people really struggle with that. And I was actually talking about a couple of nights ago at dinner with my friend who tried the CGM, the continuous glucose monitor. And I told him, because he'd listened on Creator Lab, I had the Levels guys on the pod, and that's where he first heard about it. And he was like, I'm going to sign up for it. And he basically told me, I finally got it. I'm excited to test all this stuff out. And I basically gave him a big warning. I was like, look, I think it's helpful to use this, but whenever you put a number on food or something like that, you automatically are going to try to get a lower score or a better score or whatever. And you have to really put it in perspective. Like, this is one input into your overall diet. This dude has a six pack. Like, he's literally very fit, like he's just trying to understand his health a bit better. So it still can be valuable. But I think for a lot of people, it just becomes this game where it takes over everything. And then he came to dinner and he's like, I can't eat that because of this. And I was like, all right, fair enough. That's up to you. But it's kind of the midwit meme, right? Like, you need to go to the CGM boy in the middle to come back to the balance at the end. Be like, I can eat dessert once in a while, but I should not have it every day, right? Sort of thing. So that's probably a long way of saying I see this in many different parts of my life. And the health has been the one that's been most recent. So I'll pause there because I was talking for a while. So is there any?
No,
any
but
other
what I
thoughts
want to
on that?
say was something before I jump to Jack here. What I want to say about what I loved about your piece was you actually have like kind of an aha moment when you're like when you catch yourself being like, I'm not gonna do this thing I like because of this number. You're like, oh, that's bad. Like that's a signal for you, right?
Yeah.
You're like, ooh, I gotta step back a bit. So I think that's worthwhile to mention. So I want to go to Jack here because we joked in the past. Jack's gone through the broccoli measuring phase. So Jack knows what value capture feels like. So I want to ask Jack about that phase specifically, but also, so Jack had said something to me about a year ago about how he stopped caring about how many Twitter followers he had. But I know for a fact that Jack, prior to you getting probably to 6 figures, you probably cared a bit, right? So, or maybe you didn't. But what I'm curious about is what numbers did you care about for Twitter, for growth online? And then when did you stop caring? And then you cared more about the quality of your work, if that like jump ever made, because I feel like you did mention something about that in the past.
I mean, one of the things that I would base everything off of back then was you have like the vanity metric and the value metric would be how many people follow you on Twitter and like your posts versus how many people buy shit from you.
Okay.
So that was the thing that I just started moving towards, was like all of the stuff on the front end that does not represent somebody making a economic commitment to you is not necessarily, this doesn't have no value, but a way stronger signal is who's buying your stuff. So I think as soon as I got into that world where there was a way to measure that took the focus off, because they were sometimes not correlated, right? So that at least in my head just dispelled the myth that those two numbers would go up in parallel, because it's just not true. So that took a lot of I don't know. One of the ways I've changed my thinking on that too is every additional thing you're putting out is a filter that create, like, if you're not doing it to reverse engineer that result, either way, the thing that you're doing is refining the network of people consuming your work. If you post something that you believe is true, that you want to share, and 1,000 people decide to not subscribe to the feed of content that you publish anymore, great, perfect. Just honed it more.
Yeah.
And after a certain point, you just get to not even necessarily a what's the word I'm looking for? Like a plateau, but a rotation of stuff. Like the stuff I talk about now and the stuff that I put out there now, I know there's probably 100,000 people that follow my Twitter account that look and it's like, what is this guy doing? You know, that subscribed back 2 years ago and it was like, hey guys, you know,
visualize
like
value.
This visualized value stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, a very different and a much more strategic approach to this stuff, where I was like following a bit of a playbook, trying to like build a routine around it. And now I don't have that same constraint. That was helpful to me back then. And it was kind of like a reassuring and, there's some like predictability to that is comforting, where you go back, like make the visual every day in this style and put it out, write something about it, do the same again tomorrow. And I think there's like incredible amount of merit to having a system like that. But for me, you get to a stage where it just ceases to be as interesting or creatively rewarding. So you depart from that. I also was going to say, like, I don't actually like the language value capture around this, because it actually implies something positive in my mind. Like, and in the context of, I think if you actually like, hasn't that,
I guess it's
defined as something else? Like,
no, there's different. There's
value.
There's audience capture. There's algorithmic capture, and Jack. Just one thing I wanted to say though is before you went on why you hate or dislike the term value capture. What I like about what you said though is, or how I perceived it is, you actually fought back against value capture in my eyes. Is like, if you only cared about number go up follower count, you would have just been doing
it evolved over time naturally.
Yeah,
right?
whereas what you did actually was you broke in my eyes, is like you stop caring about that. You start caring more about what mattered to Jack Butcher, which is literally what the paper is saying. Is like you should avoid the power. Like, remember the gamification of it. The jackpot. Like, Twitter is an addiction machine. We're still addicted to it, right? And it's like it's asking you to do certain behaviors which will get engagement for the platform. And in my eyes, you, by narrowing your audience set, you've actually done yourself a favor, where you are no longer reliant on that as the main signal in your life. Whereas, like, admittedly, myself, for a very long time, maybe 80% of my Twitter journey, it's just been followers, engagement, and not and often sacrificing what I truly cared about. But now I literally will just post whatever I care about, right? And that, I think that's a place that's very difficult for a lot of people to get to. And yeah, to your point, audience capture is the other term. I think there is a nuance here, in that the value capture is applicable probably more broadly.
And sorry, Trunk, the word value capture is probably saying the value capture is here from the platform.
Oh, yeah.
It's the angle from them. But I agree with what you're saying. The word value capture normally sounds like a positive thing, but it's not for us necessarily. It's for the person creating.
The value capture, it's not monetary. Actually, that's the thing I should tease out. The values obviously have many things, right? Values is your ethics versus value financial. CT Win is talking about your ethical value set, what you value in life, what's important to you, what's not important, not necessarily the financial element. I don't know if that changes, Jack, what your perception was. I think the word value.
I get that. I have a personal affinity for the word value, and I think of it as a positive term, right?
But I think, can I just read the definition, Jack, really quick, just to add to your things, just the one line, sorry, because I think it'll add. The value capture is the process of retaining some percentage of the value provided in every transaction. The only reason I'm saying that, because I think it is a positive thing based on what you're saying as well.
Right. And like, I agree with what you're saying. The platform or the brand or something is like capturing some of your resources by getting you to redo that thing over and over and over again. So perhaps it is the right language. I guess the other idea that comes to my mind is Charlie Munger, RIP, show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome, right? That idea of incentive manipulation, or there's a way in which I think you could get this idea out more broadly if it wasn't coined that way. Like if you implied some of the downside in the way you frame the idea. And maybe that's just my bias too, because I'm so in the weeds on that. Like if you're looking at it from the perspective of the consumer, maybe you do see it as a negative thing. I was going to say one other thing, but I think I forgot. Yeah, I did.
Sorry, that might be my
no
mistake.
No worries.
But I think you made a really good point there. But no, I do think the language is an interesting one, because the reason I brought that definition was because it said the transaction. So it is really about the transaction of, in this scenario, you posting on Twitter and the Twitter as a platform, Fitbit, me using a Fitbit versus the creator of Fitbit. And the other nuance I wanted to share was for you two specifically, is when we talk about social media, it's generally people are talking about as consumers most of the time. But you guys specifically, there's a difference between the incentives for a creator on Twitter and someone like me who's mostly just reading, right? So, and the kind of, and social media as a whole, of the incentive on there around like, why am I even going on there? Because I'm going to get like a little dopamine hit of, like something funny, a fight video, which might not be something I'm looking for, but shows up, or, attractive people showing up on the feed. And so I was going to bring that up after. We can get to that in a second about kind of the algorithmic feed versus the curated feed. But I wanted to give you guys more, if you wanted to chat more about as creators on there.
I'll just remember what I was going to say. Like the difference is, and the why it can lead you down like the audience capture thing is a perfect example of this, where the maximum amount of engagement is going to come from confirming a bias that already exists, right? Which, as a creator in quotation marks here, you're not creating anything by doing that. You're just playing to capturing this bias that exists.
Yeah.
You are not practicing value investing in your creative activities,
Yeah.
right? You're
Value
day trading
investing in your
attention
tweets.
or whatever,
Yeah.
you know, like I know this is going to get a reaction. I'm going to say it. And the like ironic thing about all of this is like to be contrarian, to have your ideas gain value over time, they have to be underappreciated when they are launched, right? This idea of the significance of an idea gaining importance over time versus losing it. And that, I think those are the two ends of the spectrum. This joke is funny today because this happened, but over time it just dissipates, versus here's this observation I have that if I'm right, the next 10 years will prove it to be true. Right? And there's countless numbers of incredible writers and creators that operate from that perspective, where you're making an observation that nobody else has made or very few people have made and articulating it in a new way, which can lead you to some of that initial engagement. But things of value, like these ephemeral observations that are valuable, that increase in value over time, like, you know, like a Paul Graham essay or something like that, right? Where at the time you read it, you're like, oh, it's great. And then you read it 10 years later, and you're like, oh man, this guy really knew what he was talking about, because all of these things have been confirmed.
Wait, Jack, you want me to get super meta? Because what you just said, I was going to bring up an excerpt from a Paul Graham essay. He literally said what you said. It just doubles down on your point. This is what Paul Graham wrote about. And for the listeners, what I'm referencing is Jack's idea that what may be of value in the moment, the market will not understand it. People will not understand it. This is what Paul Graham wrote about the best startup ideas. And his whole point is, at that moment, they sound idiotic. This is what he wrote. He goes, the best startup ideas seem at first like bad ideas. I've written about this before. If a good idea were obviously good, someone else would have already done it. So the most successful founders tend to work on ideas that few besides them realize are good, which is not that far from a description of insanity until you reach the point where you see the results. I mean, Jack is on the same way. Jack was literally describing, and then he brings up Paul Graham. And in an essay, Paul Graham had just literally written what Jack was describing. I love this circulatariness of it. Well, what you guys have the word?
Hey, did we bring up that F1 thing last week? I think we did.
Yeah, the engine.
Yeah, like things reach their point of absolute maximum performance right before they become obsolete. Just like that, again, is a completely contrarian, inverted way to look at the world. But
well, similar like when Elon went on, similarly with Dogecoin, take another field, investing. The maximum saturation of that meme was when Elon went on SNL, right? Like the joke with SBF and Alameda was they said that they're like this special investing thing. But one of their investors wrote a blog post. He's like, "Yeah, I saw Elon go on SNL. I knew that was a top for Doge." Like that was like the extent of their. I mean, they were right, but that was the extent of their analysis, right? So, dude, I don't know. I hope the listeners are still with us. I think we've hit on some pretty interesting things. And we're just like,
I think it impacts us all as well. That's why it's interesting, but.
And a lot of cooking going on here. I had a couple more thoughts on it, but I'd love for you guys to finish off any of the thoughts you guys had.
Yeah, I had some stuff to ask you, but Jack, anything else you want to share before I ask that?
No, you go.
Yeah, great. No, that was really good discussion on that. So, Trung, in your write-up, you kind of talked about it there, but you mentioned how your Twitter X usage is a perfect example of this, and how you've had to kind of go beyond that. So just a few to call it out. You said always searching for content. We joke about that in the group chat all the time. Like one of us two, me or Jack, will share something, and Trunk's like, "Can I steal this for the meme or whatever?" And it's like, and the second one, I was looking for a meme. The next one was the itch. If you go days without posting a banger or in the ballpark of 5,000 likes, you start to stress out. And it's very honest of you to say this, because it's not something a lot of people want to admit.
But I really want to demonstrate how it's like truly like capturing my mind and fucking with completely. How I think, right?
Yeah, and then the last couple, argumentative, it can make you more argumentative, time allocation, using up basically too much time on it. And then the last one, slot machine effect. Basically every post you're getting this 10 to 15 minute fog, as you watch the early engagement come in.
Did you guys ever had that? Bilal, when you're posting, like you're looking for that first 5, you're like, how's it doing? Right? That feeling?
Yeah, definitely. 100%. And so, it kind of comes back to like the idea of like when you're writing stuff on there, because for all of us, it's been partly our work, right? Like for you two specifically, it is like Trung has a newsletter and an AI company that he's promoting on there and weaving in. You're also a journalist, writer, lowercase j. Jack has built stuff on the internet and he's built his whole thing on the internet. So you need that. When I was using it a lot, I was using Twitter mainly for basically to get more people to listen to my podcast. That was the primary use of it. And once I got in there, I was like, oh, this is actually fun. I get to meet people, talk, whatever. But you probably noticed for the last several years, I haven't really been writing anything. And even if you go onto my Instagram feed, I haven't posted a picture for like 4 years or something. And so once in a while, I'll post a story, but that's been like kind of a conscious thing. But I'm not like against it. I probably will at some point. But it was over time, to be very frank, like this podcast was a part of that in a positive way. Like my conclusion was, why am I doing all this in the first place, right? I like podcasts because we get to have nuanced discussions like this in long form. And that is the part of media that I want to spend my time creating because I care about that. And there's lots of other people in the world who are better at me than writing threads or creating memes like Trung does or creating visuals like Jack does. And I'm like, appreciate all those things, but that's not necessarily what I want to play in. So a big part of this is like, what game are you choosing to play, right? Like, and for me, that has always been the thing where I said, all right, now I'm working with you two guys. You guys share it on your Twitter. I share it as well, but I'm not going to spend all day trying to gain a Twitter following in air quotes so I can promote the thing that I actually really care about. I'm going to spend that time doing other things that actually add value to my life. That's one. But the second part is actually as a consumer, that is something I've actually changed my mind on quite a lot in the last few months. We talked about the cocaine phone versus kale phone. And I don't know how long this will last, but I've actually deleted the apps off my phone now, like even my primary app, which I know lots of people do, but for me, it's actually quite a big thing. Like Instagram, TikTok are now both off there. I will probably add them at some point, but I wanted to give myself an extended break where I was noticing, like, for example, I went to watch a film on the weekend and I was like, damn, my attention span is just not like it used to be, right? Like we all probably have suffered from that. And I was like, man, as much as I like going on TikTok and I actually think my TikTok feed is fairly positive. Like I don't get a bunch of crap anymore. Still, it's that quick refresh. And specifically, it's the For You page thing. It's like me not choosing to watch something is what I'm struggling with. Or I don't want to say struggling with, but it's what I'm kind of going against there. So even on Twitter, since they've changed to the For You page style stuff, like I mentioned before, like everyone, if someone shouts fight in the school playground, everyone runs over. That's a natural human way of reacting. If someone is very attractive, if a model shows up on your feed and they're dancing, yeah, you're going to naturally look at it because you're a human, right? And so my thing has been, I don't want to follow any of those things. And that was my way of curating what I consume, the same way I curate what I read and the news I take in. But now, because all the social media platforms are incentivized just to keep you on there, their incentives are not aligned with mine anymore. So I need to give that a temporary break,
you don't
essentially.
Want value capture, algorithmic capture.
Exactly.
Let me throw something out there.
Yeah, go for it.
Just based on what you said, Bilal, is there's an element here. Actually, you sent this chart a couple weeks ago. We never talked about it. You guys remember that chart about like student test scores? Everything's down since basically the smartphone came out, right? And something that I haven't fully formed a thought on this, but there's something I want to talk to you guys about. It's called, I'm calling it the feedback crisis. And what I mean by that is we've obviously had the obesity crisis, right? 50% in North America, we've talked about recent episodes, or the world will be overweight or obese in the next decade. And Bilal was talking about how the podcast platform is much more fulfilling to him than getting like the quick hits on maybe Twitter or Instagram. And that's why he hasn't posted in a while. But the thing I'm realizing, or I think I've realized might be contributing to this, and is feedback. People aren't good at taking feedback in the sense of how much feedback are you supposed to get, right? Like think about 100 years ago. how much feedback were you getting? You're maybe getting somebody told you something at the end of the day for your workday, or maybe your parent would tell you something after you had worked on a little project for weeks on end. So you might be getting quote unquote feedback once or twice a week, right? But now literally anything you post, you send a message to somebody, you post something on Instagram, you make any type of comment on the internet, feedback comes instantaneously. You're getting dozens of hits of feedback a day, right? And I think, I don't know if you guys are seeing where I'm going with this, but like, because when you're about to get feedback, think about the worst feedback you ever got. You had an employee review, or your employer reviewed you, your boss. You're bracing for them to criticize you, right? But now people are doing that dozens of times a day. Anything you put out, because of how many trolls there are on the internet,
that's a good
you're
point.
bracing for hearing something negative. Even if that's not the intention, you put anything else, you're bracing for it, right? I mean, we've all posted online. 99% of the stuff is positive. You remember the 1% that's bad. So if Jack is posting
you put
10
it in
times
the
a day,
in the vault like Goggins
you put it in the
does.
vault, right? You literally put it in the vault, and you're like, "That's my pre-workout." But what I'm saying is, like, I think just the same way that the obesity crisis has happened because we're being fed a factory sugar that our body was never meant to process. I think we talk about the media diet. This is kind of related, but it's like, man, we're not supposed to get feedback 20 times a day. Humans are not meant for that. We were not evolutionary designed to get that feedback because we care so much what other people think for social community reasons. And if you get rejected and ostracized, that actually like psychologically hurts you, right? So it's like you're putting out 20 pieces of content a day. You're not supposed to. It's like the easy access to calories. I don't know if any of that makes sense for you guys. I'd love for you guys
does.
Well, you're also in the 1% of people putting this shit out 20 times a day too. So we have a
we're like obese in this sense, right? We've got way too much access to this feeling.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
We need an Ozempic for the mind.
That comes through Neuralink, so it all comes together.
Or just put your phone down, man, like that meme.
Well, it's like meditation.
Touch grass.
Yeah.
Touch grass. Well, there you go. Well, Jack nailed it, right? Well, why don't we finish this section off with Luke Burgess, author Wanting, friend of the pod. Thick desires versus thin desires. That's how he did it, right? He's like, what are thick desires? It's things it's hobbies and things that you engage in where you feel good afterwards. Like if you sit
That's a nice easy filter there, right? Like it sounds obvious, but
no, but it sounds obvious, but it actually
it's hard to implement.
It's not, right? It's like sitting down for an hour to read a book, you won't feel bad afterwards. You will feel great. Going for a 60-minute run, you might hate it while you do it. You feel great afterwards. It's much easier just to turn on your phone and scroll through a feed, but you will feel like ass afterwards. I mean, that's his point, right?
That's like, a great way to put it, yeah.
So, yeah, I think we hit on a lot of things.
I was just going to add the last things from your post, and I kind of had thoughts on basically kind of where does it leave everyone? And so we could add a whole discussion around like whose responsibility is this? I had a note here for myself versus like the social media platforms being policed and Fitbit being policed, etc. My personal take on that, you probably agree with, is like there's individual responsibility here as well. Like at least if you listen to this pod, you're aware of these ideas, and it is up to us to create those boundaries. And then I think you actually gave some really good kind of advice in there, basically, from Andy Grove, right? So Andy Grove, famous guy, was he IBM guy, right?
Third CEO Intel, legendary.
Legendary, has a great book. If anyone manages anyone, you should read his book. Is it Higher Output Management or something? Really helpful. And so I'd actually written this stuff out before I even read that part, reread it today because I kind of forgot about it. But the two kind of things here are guarding against overreacting and pairing indicators. And so that was my original point here, was data on its own is not bad. Like metrics on their own are not bad. It's all about the interpretation and the relationship you have with them. And I even just in the business world, like I my version of that, he used pairing indicators. I use like secondary metrics. So like when I've done any marketing stuff or business stuff with teams, I will say like, you do OKRs, right? Like objective key results. Like we want to grow from 1 million to 2 million in revenue. We want to reach this many customers, etc. And normally what happens is back to the incentive thing. It's like if you give an incentive to my sales team, I say, hey, you need to go and hit this quota. If you don't, you're not getting your budget. You're not getting your bonus. That becomes their sole mission, is to hit that number. That's the incentive. And what I learned over time, it sounds obvious, is you really need those secondary metrics, because what would happen in those scenarios is people would find ways to hack the system, right? Like Google, it happened all the time.
Effect.
Cobra effect, exactly. Yeah, Trung wrote about that in the pod as well. But literally at Google, we were talking about this recently with the sales guys. People at one point they were measuring. They would send a spreadsheet out for the whole of EMEA in my Dublin office, and you would get a list of every single sales rep, all of our names, and it would have number of calls, number of minutes you spent on the phone. It was ridiculous, right? Like, and it literally and then you're 22, like hungry. You're like, oh, I'm gonna meet my German friend Jens and that.
I'm going to be on this phone for 75. Well, it's a joke with our boy Hunter. Hunter cold calls. Charlie Rich. Charlie Rich does that account.
But
his one of the Deloitte 1 year contract was incredible too.
Oh my god! Oh, that was good. But all jokes aside, literally, this is not. You can work this out. But what people started doing is they were calling their cell phone in their pocket, right? And they're calling random people. They're doing stupid stuff like that. And that was the same Charlie Munger, show me the incentive, show you the outcome or whatever. And so in this case, I think applying it back to ourselves, it's like, if you're using a Fitbit, if you're using Oura Ring, like use it, but you need to have a good relationship with and be intentional about why you're looking at this Fitbit step count, right? Like, and so that secondary metric for me is this actually contributing to like my overall health? And if I skip it once in a while, that's completely fine. In fact, I might even encourage that for myself. Like on Saturday, I literally didn't leave the house and I needed to be a vegetable all day,
Uber
right?
Eats, bro? Did you hit that Uber Eats?
Twice. You know what I mean? But it's like one of those things where over time you create those things that actually serve you, not serve the algorithm or serve the creator of the
Jumping
app.
On your point, Jack did mention a pairing indicator as he was growing his Twitter audience. He's like, he saw the non-correlation between his business results and the audience, right? And again, the audience is what the platform wants from you. The business results is Twitter does not care about your business results, right? Well, they will be when it's everything app, but Twitter X. But I thought when you were talking about the pairing indicators, that was great because Jack did bring that up previously. And what I will add about Andy Grove is the example he specifically brought up was inventory levels, which I think a lot of our listeners, they work in DTC, they work in kind of physical manufacturing, they do understand that aspect. He's basically saying, if your goal is inventory levels, which is what Andy Grove brought up, is like, you're going to be laser focused on that thing. And it's going to cost you in other areas because if your whole point is you want to keep inventories low, then you can't actually react to the supply and demand properly. And he's like, that's why he said what Bilal brought up, pairing indicator. What is the second indicator to keeping inventory levels low? Maybe it's a turn of the inventories, right? And then the other thing is like you cannot overreact to it, which are actually great. These are actually, you're right. These are great countermeasures, even just for a regular person trying to use like Twitter.
Yeah, just regular life. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, great way. All right, should we wrap that up? I mean, boys, we got a few minutes. If you want to just touch on, I don't know if we're going to touch on Apple App Store. If you want to speak about it, we can. But maybe we just do the Netflix WWE / Super Bowl. Jack had a little thing here, so
let's get the Jack.
Maybe
picture,
we just wrap that. Yeah, Jack.
Hey boys, you're attributing it to me, but I read it. Okay.
Right.
I'm just reporting here. I'm a journalist. I'm not.
Okay, no. Jack, we're not calling. We're saying that you got the special feed sometimes. I know you got multiple tabs.
Yeah.
This is not Jack's. This is not Jack's, by the way, people.
And I'll just say really. Go on.
Go on.
No, go for it.
I was going to say, I'm surprised you boys haven't seen this on your feeds here. Maybe
this is the tinfoil hat segment of the pod. So anything goes. Anything's allowed here. No judgment zone.
Oh, you want me teeing it up?
Go on.
We've seen both sides of the political spectrum comment on the potentiality of Taylor Swift swaying certain currents of American culture, shall we say. So one side I've seen has said Taylor Swift, what they called what's the team her
Chiefs?
fellow plays for? The Chiefs.
Swifties. Oh, sorry, I thought you were saying.
No, the Chiefs win the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
The Chiefs win the Super Bowl. He proposes after the Super Bowl. They get married. They have a baby. It reawakens an era of American dynamism. The birth rates soar. S&P hits 9,000.
CCP collapses.
PCP collapses. That was another part of that tweet. And then the other side of it, you have, well, I don't even know if this is the other side. This is another take on it, is 20% of American voters will act upon Taylor Swift's endorsement for any political candidate at this point in time. So putting her in that position, like the degree of screen time and influence that has been amassing in the last 6 to 12 months, I would imagine has changed that percentage significantly. So I don't even know if you can call this a conspiracy theory. It's just the elevation of a single voice as a massive influence on politics, culture, all of these things. The one thing I would be curious about, and Trung, maybe you have some of this information, is like, up to what age are people obsessed with Taylor Swift?
That's I like where you're going with this. Okay, we're teasing this out now because we're adding this segment to the bullet points when we talk about the episode. So Jack, you brought up a great point. So there is, and a recent example actually, it is believed that Oprah Winfrey swung an X percentage of the election for Barack Obama. And they're both from Chicago. I believe specifically in Democratic primaries against Hillary Clinton, that Oprah Winfrey's seal of approval for Barack Obama swung that. So that's important. So there has been a recent historical precedent. Now, what I'll say about, I think you're right. The other thing I'll address is this is not even a conspiracy theory. She's the most famous person in the world, if we're being honest at this point. Mm-hmm. She's top 5 most famous person in the world today. And she has famously not been super political. And people have asked her to try to get more political and be more politically involved. People are reading into
Republicans buy Jordans too, no?
Yeah.
That's probably
Republicans buy Jordans. Yeah, that's a great quote.
Yeah.
Republicans buy Jordans. So she's a business person, right? And I actually did see some of those. I saw that people are mad that the NFL is in cahoots with Taylor Swift because apparently she's been worth $500 million to the NFL. The NFL is the biggest media organization in the world. We've talked about this. They make $20 billion a year, and that's just how big Taylor is. She moves the needle for the NFL. You know what I mean? And they've clearly embraced her. And the running joke, a lot of people getting sick of it in their minds. They're like, why is the camera on Taylor, right? And they think that the other conspiracy is that the Biden is like calling up Goodell from the NFL and being like, make sure the Chiefs get to the Super Bowl, right? Like this so whole thing. Funny. And then she'll swing the vote as she's super saturated. And
I'll say, I haven't been watching the actual games yet. I will watch Super Bowl, but how often is it like every play? Like how often is
the first few weeks was like all the time. Now it's just like, she's as big as the NFL. That's
and also the last week or whatever, that other guy, the guy, I forgot his name, he's shirtless guy with a beard, he's down in
his brother.
His brother, right? Yeah.
So Travis,
that was incredible too.
For people who don't know Travis, from a media standpoint, Travis and Jason, they have one of the biggest sports podcasts in the world. I think it's called In the Heights. I don't listen to it, but I know they're massive. And obviously a big part of it was Travis ended up, even before him dating Taylor Swift, they're quite big. And then
come on, that's ammunition for the conspiracy, right? The biggest media platform in like pre-existing before this shit.
No, but imagine. Well, here, let's. You know what? Let's put ourselves in the dark room. You, Bilal, me, and Jack all have cigars in our mouths, and we work for NFL. We're thinking, here's our mission. Let's put a metric. The most viewed event in U.S. history is the Apollo landing, 125 million to 150 million. That's about 60% of the population at the time. Yeah. But 22 of the top 30 television events are all Super Bowls. And then the second one is last year's Super Bowl. So 112 million. So imagine in your head, you're like, how do we top 125 million? How do we top the moon landing?
This is going to crush it, yeah?
Yeah. No, but what else are you going to do? Like Jack's like, he's got the tinfoil hat on. 6 months ago, what are you going to do?
125 million is so you're, is there anything else in the top 10 that's not sports or?
Number 10 is, well, you guys will laugh. Number 10 is So the only other one in the top 10 was Richard Nixon's resignation speech.
Mm-hmm.
So a news event. So, but then people will be like,
also in a time where there were like 5 TV channels, right? So it's very different.
Well, here's the criticism. I put the stat up and people are like, yeah, Trump, what was the population of the United States in 1969? You're right. It was 200 million. So now it's 305 million. But to Bilal's point, there's a lot more distractions.
A lot more fragmentation.
Right? So
here,
like,
boys, you know?
I'm saying, what is the trade-off
in real
here?
terms? Like
Is
inflation adjusted.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Is 125 million still pretty impressive in this totally
Very
fractured
impressive.
landscape, right?
So the prediction here is that this is going to blow that out. Do you
My
reckon
prediction
this
is this. I don't even think it's a big prediction. It's people, what's happening in 2 weeks? You got Usher doing the halftime show. The legend, the R&B legend. For people who don't know, Usher has a massive
Jack's
residency.
face. I feel like Jack's met Usher a couple times.
I'm saying I don't know if he like.
He's not the
there's
one moving the needle.
When's Taylor Swift doing it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, but could you imagine that? That would be insane.
Well,
yeah. They're getting best of both worlds this way.
But,
by the way, I love Usher. Let that be on the record, you know?
Yeah.
Jack
Atlanta,
has met
you
Usher.
have an Atlanta connection,
I don't mean to
right?
blow up your spot there, but...
Well, Jack, let me put it out this
living.
way. To your point, though, if we're being fully honest, Taylor Swift is weird. If you're Usher, you're probably pissed off that Taylor Swift is going to show up. Like,
that's true. It's kind of hijacking it a bit.
She's totally overshadowed by Taylor Swift.
I bet he's going to bring the heat now extra, though, because he knows he needs to bring it.
Well,
and he's an
point.
incredible performer as well, so I'm sure it's going to be killer.
I heard this thing, boys. This is the level to which Taylor Swift has become ubiquitous. Is I am now aware of. She is playing a tour date in Japan the day before the Super Bowl.
Oh yeah,
right?
I saw this. There was a whole
People
breakdown of a video.
They're running the math.
She's got to hit that private plane. I think she'll make it.
She's already on the private plane.
Yeah, she's on the private plane either way.
She's already got
she's
the
not
F6.
on Delta. You know what I mean?
She's got the F-16 escorts making sure that there's no.
No. I saw this. There was an amazing viral video before I deleted TikTok off my phone. There was a great viral video of like this guy, like with his girlfriend or like wife and her sisters, and they've got like clipboards. He's got a clipboard and they're writing notes to be like, all right, let's do the maths there, and it is really funny. But I think she's gonna make it back. Obviously she's gonna be there. But it's pretty intense. Like, can you imagine you're doing 3-4 shows in a row in Tokyo, and then you're flying to be one of the main faces?
That's why you're the GOAT.
That's why she is.
Mm-hmm.
And
she is
hey, listen, when President Biden asks you for a favor, you do.
There we go. There we go.
When President Biden is calling you to do service for the country.
Yo, if Biden actually did this, that's an incredible move, to be fair.
Well, that was a running joke about, I don't know if you guys saw Jon Stewart's coming back to host a Daily Show every Monday through the 2024 election. And the running joke on Twitter was he got the call.
Biden made that call.
He got the call from Biden.
That stuff makes a bigger impact than anything else. There'll be any of their own speeches, to be honest, you know. So, all right, boys, I think we could call it there. In full transparency, Arsenal game starts in 14 minutes, so I need to process this, send it to Rafa, and get the game going. But no, this was a great discussion. I will say, for people who wanted us to talk about Netflix, WWE, Apple, App Store, we didn't get to it. But anyway, there's not that much there anyway. So I think we had a good meaty discussion there.
Yeah.
Appreciate your support, and we'll see you guys next week. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Peace.